welcome to Voices of the West from Dusty Saddle. Today we have the honor of talking to Daniel Grabowski. He's the author of the Jesse Clayton series of Westerns that have been burning up the charts on everything. Daniel, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, our pleasure on all that. So tell us a little bit about yourself to get started with here.
I'm an author based here in the UK. Um, I've been writing for years and years since I was a teenager. Went to university in Sheffield to do a creative writing degree. And then not long after university, I decided to write a novel. Did everything I could to sort of try and get it published. Thought it was really quite too hard. When you get rejection after rejection, I was like, you know what, never mind. And then spent the next sort of 8 years in education, first as a teacher, and then thought, no, I've had enough of this. So I just became a TA so I could just enjoy it a bit more. And then sort of about a year ago, I decided I have enough of that and I wanted to turn my hand to writing again. So since then, I've been working freelance, doing jobs that way. And then at the same time, back doing fiction, short stories, things like that. Won a couple of competitions. And then I came across Dusty Saddle and had a wonderful meeting with Nick where I pitched Jesse Clayton, and the rest is history.
Excellent. Well, very glad to have you along here. Are you technically from down the street from Nick, since you both coming from out of basically the same town?
Um, yeah, like we've had a few conversations, sort of, we're both very near Leicester, like the city. And we're both sort of in like towns nearby, so we're within an hour of each other. So not too far. Well, especially when you consider sort of like in America, obviously, I don't know what you guys class as close. Like, is an hour away that close when you've
Hour
got,
away is in the same
states that
county
are
here,
bigger?
so yeah, I'd say that I've got jobs that within 2-3 hours. That's usually a fine thing for me. So I count that as close. An hour is just another part of the same town, more or less.
So if I drive 2 hours from here, I'm at the coast, like in pretty much any direction. So that's how small we are over here.
Very good. So, is there something about that particular section of England that draws people into westerns, or what brought you into westerns?
Um, well, like this is the thing, like over here, like westerns, they're relatively small, and have been for a long while. I think the dominant sort of genre over here is the soaps, like we have our EastEnders, Coronation Street, things like that, and probably like crime dramas, like we have the BBC, ITV here, and they're always showing sort of murder mysteries, police procedurals, things like that. But for me, although I suppose it is changing because with all the streaming platforms now, there's more and more people over here that I know that are watching things like Yellowstone and is it 1883 and
That's part
1923?
of
That whole
yeah, those are all part of the
the,
Yellowstone series. Yes.
yeah, the big Taylor Sheridan thing. That's yeah. Um, all things like that are sort of bringing more and more people over here into it. So more people are getting around to it. But I suppose for me, I had a bit of a weird introduction to the Western genre. I remember my first experience of a Western was it was the late 90s. I think it was 99, when Wild Wild West came out in cinemas. So, terrible film with Will Smith as like he's like Secret Service, and I was like, oh, this is cool. He's spinning his guns, doing all this, and then he fights a giant mechanical spider at the end. So I was like, oh, as a kid you enjoy it. Watching it again as an adult, I was like, oh, that's terrible. And then again, my sort of second brush with it was with a science fiction show, funnily enough, called Firefly. Yeah, so and it which was basically like a Western in space, and I loved the whole atmosphere of it, everything, these big remote places, the whole idea of it being the frontier, and people trying to make it out with very little to do. And then as I sort of got older in my late teens, I really, really took to the genre when I watched Deadwood. I watched that at about 17 years old, and I loved Al Swearingen. I loved Seth Bullock. I thought they were fantastic. And then I was out, I really liked it. So that's when I started getting into it. I watched all the old spaghetti westerns, like pretty much every Clint Eastwood one. I watched The Searchers with John Wayne. Absolutely loved that. And then which was great because then when I went to university, we did like a subject on film, and my tutor at the time, he said, if you want the perfect idea of a perfect script and the perfect structure of the film, watch The Searchers with John Wayne. And I was like, oh, great. I already know so much about this. And then, yeah, then there was Justified with Tim Oliphant again. Absolutely loved that. Loved the accents, loved the sort of the dialogue. Elmore Leonard, obviously, is the one behind it. Started reading all his books. And obviously they've just brought that back with City Primeval, so I've been watching that, thoroughly enjoying it. Um, and then yeah, from there I kind of started getting into the literature a bit. I read um, uh, Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. I'm listening to that again on Audible right now, and it's brilliant. Um, sort of, uh, is it Lewis L'Amour or is it Louis L'Amour?
It's
Because I've
Louis.
never actually heard it.
It's Louis L'Amour, but yeah, it's
It's
not
Louis, right?
spelled
Because
how
it's
it's
always one
said
of those
by
where it's like you
who's
read it,
saying it. Yeah.
you read it, you're like, oh, I'm not sure. So yeah, just read his short stories again. Mistakes Can Kill You, and just sort of, yeah, just ever since then, just sort of really had a penchant for it. And then there's just been that's the sad thing, that it's never really massively caught on in this country. So like in my local library and things, there's a Western section that they've combined with romance. So you have all your big sci-fi. Crime is just a whole wall, general fiction, and then just tucked away in a little corner. You've got all your Mills and Boone, and then on one little shelf on the bottom, all like the old Black Horse westerns with their sort of hardbacks. So chasing those down was fun. And then yeah, so there's never really been a market for it. It's something I've really enjoyed. And then so when I saw the opportunity with Dusty Saddle, because Nick had done an article in Writers Forum, sort of like a magazine over here for like people like me, for job ideas, things like that, competitions, etc. Um, and he'd done an article in there where he'd done a piece, and then I think was it Webb? Was it Simon Webb? Or was it David Webb? He an English-based author he had over here. He'd done a little article as well about how he was like, oh yeah, it's great. I just sit down, I deliver the manuscript, I give it to them, and they don't bother me until they want another one. It's fantastic. I was like, oh, this sounds easy. So yeah, I'd sort of got in touch there, asked. I realize I'm going on a massive tangent now, just telling you how I have
No,
been.
it's
But
all still on track
um,
with everything. So
yeah, so I uh, emailed and said, look, I'm interested. Um, could you send me like a few samples, maybe so I can get an idea of the kind of style that your authors go for? Because like from Leonard to Lamore to everybody else, they've all got a different, oh, do they just like, first person point of view, multi perspective, stuff like that. And then the reply got, I was like, yeah, we'll just set up a meeting and have a chat. And then that chat was with Nick, and he said, so I hear you want to pitch a story. I was like, oh. So in that moment, I was like, yeah, I've got an idea, like sort of, um, and then just sort of rolled off my tongue a bit like a Jack Reacher meets the man with no name, just like a drifter that goes through. And he just turned around to me and said, yeah, we can sell that. when can you get us a sample? So, and that was the start of it, really.
Excellent. So, with all of your sort of influence that you have there, what do you think makes a great Western?
Oh. Um, Obviously I mean, for me, and for when I've been trying to write my own for what I think, okay, that's what makes a good one. I think obviously there's atmosphere. You've got to really like, depending on like where it's set. So if it's like a mountain man, or whether it's out in the desert or what, you have to get that sense of sort of isolation, because obviously it was even at the later period when they were bringing in telephone lines, the railway was pretty much all there. There were still those pockets of places where, beyond that little community of people, you were on your own. So if there was a problem, you have to sort it out yourself, basically, because nobody's coming to save you. You can't call 99, sorry, 911. It's 999 right here. Sorry. There's none of that. There's no Uber to come and pick you up. You can't ring Just Eat and or DoorDash and get food delivered. It's very much about having that kind of atmosphere where you've got to have people that are very much got plenty of agency and can do it for themselves. And I think the other thing that matters, sorry if my accent's a bit, I'm trying to be as clear, but it's the love prism around here. You soften your T's really bad. Um, the other thing, and this is what I picked up from Elmore, is dialogue. It's gotta be like punchy, and it's gotta reflect the period. So I was very much like, I know I'm not James Joyce, I'm not Keats, I'm not going to give you pages and pages of prose like Steinbeck would. Um, but what I do try to do is I have a plot that's engaging, but I try to give my characters as much time as possible just to talk, to drive as much of the story through talking. And because like everybody in a western just sounds cool as well. You got that drawl, and it's like, oh, it's yeah. So yeah, I spent a lot of time sort of rewatching like old films like Tombstone, or with a bit of Tombstone, 310 to Yuma, the original and the remake, um, and then just sort of um, researching the period as well, watching a lot of like YouTube for history. I got as many books as I could out on the actual general history, because funnily enough, we don't teach American history over here. I can't think why.
No, can't see
Um,
why that the relevance there. No.
yeah, especially with American history, Britain's not exactly, we don't come off well in that. Uh,
Us defiant little colonies. Yeah, we.
Yeah. So yeah, I've read around a lot, and I tried to find as much as I could on sort of mannerisms and sort of turns of phrase, and just sort of like popular words, and more importantly, words that didn't exist at the time. Because there's like, I don't want anyone rocking around saying dude, because but I'm fairly sure that wasn't around sort of back then. And
Depends on
just in
how
doing
you
that, I
use it, but yeah.
yeah
There were dude
I
ranches, there were things like that, but yes, not quite a
yeah,
common slang.
yeah. And in doing that, I ended up I just learned like so much about, like, because one thing I didn't know was just how sort of diverse the Old West was. All the old films just sort of paint it as, it's quite whitewashed, and then you've got the Indians that are villains in a lot of the sort of old traditional pieces. And then sort of looking at it now, with you had all sorts of Europeans and everything sort of across there. So that was fun to learn, and I tried to work that a bit in as well, to give different voices and accents and things, and just general fun characters just to throw in there.
Absolutely, yes. So, what do you feel that readers are looking for in the process of reading a Western?
Um, I think, I mean, this was one thing that I sort of look to was, especially as someone, I imagine it's quite different like across the pond, because I imagine as a country, do you guys like? I imagine it's like looked back on with almost nostalgia, and it's quite like a romanticized period.
Depends on the region, but definitely, yes, the cowboy is
Yeah,
a part of American culture that kind of still resonates a little bit.
and I suppose the majority of people that sort of love a good western will probably have that mindset. But like from my point of view, obviously in terms of you know the history I know of my country, there's nothing really like that to sort of massively cling to. But I think from what I've read and what really drew me in with every story, and what I imagine like every fan of a western will enjoy, is for saying it was such, like, well, not desperate period, but you had to work hard. It was very much, it was a tough place to live, but at the same time, with the frontier and constantly discovering new things, new finds, building the country, there's that sense of wonder and like sort of finding those things, and that trying to find the word, sort of uh oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, just sort of like the sense of agency a lot of people had, that oh, you could build your own American dream sort of thing. It's like, it's that sense of these people go out there, they work hard, and in a lot of these novels it turns out well for them. So it's just that sort of there's always that sense of hope. That's what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Things are hard, but that's always a common theme. It's like, there's an optimism towards them at the end.
Absolutely, yes.
What I was trying to get at.
One of the huge parts of westerns is a sense of optimism, or at least the ability to overcome adversity. Is always
Yeah.
you're never just messed up. You're the man is coming for you, but there's always a way out.
I mean, that's one thing that even in a lot of revisionist titles that we're getting at the minute in the past sort of 20 years, even in those, like The Revenant, for example, that's very much a brutal look at what the period is like. But then obviously the sense of overcoming adversity there, as Leo DiCaprio sort
Yeah,
of overcomes a literal bear and crawls his way back to sort of correct the wrongs that have been done against him in very grisly fashion. But
grizzly and bears, it works. So, what comes first for you, the plot or the character?
um well, initially the character came first, because I'd promised Nick a Jack Reacher in the Old West. So I had to figure out, what kind of character could be that. And I was like, well, we can't be sort of a US Marshal kind of character or a Pinkerton, because they're very much bound by a code. I was like, well, maybe a mountain man, but I know there's a lot of that you've got authors that are already writing about, and they're doing it so well. I was like, well, kind of want to try and carve out my own little niche here, that while I'm not going to reach their heights, I might be able to say, oh, if you like them, there's this that I'm doing as well. So I settled on sort of, right, we have a drifter, somebody that'll go all around the country taking jobs, doing whatever, give him a bit of a shady past, so he's good with a gun, and we can learn about that as we go through. And then that gave me the opportunity to basically, um once I'd got Jesse, and it took me ages to figure the name, crikey. The amount that I went, I got like a whole half a book full of just random names I scrolled. But yeah, but once I had him, it was like, okay, I know him now. Now it's a case of the plot. what are some ideas that are going to sort of, push him, push his ideals, maybe make him change his mind on certain things. So that was a fun part then, because I was like, right, let's think of all the sort of Western tropes we've got. So in Drifter, the first one, we've got the whole, oh, he used to be bad. He's trying to do the right thing now. So anytime he sees that he can help somebody, he'll go and do that. And that's the whole starting point of that book, where he sees Winona and her father there, or the characters in the book, they're in trouble, they're being held up, and he intervenes and saves the day. But little does he know that as he does that, they take him to the town Fortune, and that is under siege by a gang that these two people that have held those two up were part of. And so he ends up getting caught up in all that trouble as much as he doesn't want to. It's like, I was just helping a little bit, really like to go. But every time he tries to leave, something pulls him back into the point where, right, okay, this is a bad man. He's got to be stopped. And then for part two, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a train in the background in A One-Way Ticket to Ruin. I'd love that title. And that was very much there's always trains in a Western. In pretty much any Western, there's always a train. So I was like, okay,
Training
how can I
part
make
of it.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, how can I make that sort of the focal point? Because one thing I didn't want to do was overuse ideas. So I was like, okay, if this has got a train in it, it's I'm gonna not use trains much for a good long while. So I was like, I really need to make the most of this train. So the whole idea there was, Jesse would be on the train, but at the same time, there'd be a gang of train robbers, and so it'd be very much be, a very tense sort of novel about him trying to sort of outmaneuver these robbers at the very same time in a very closed environment, and so obviously, there's stuff that happens on the roof of the train. There's a problem with the tracks. There might not be a bomb on the train. Who knows? It might be, headed off the rail. All those kind of things that, to get you to really sort of drive it forward. And then Mountain Men, I was like, oh yeah, there it is. I was like, okay, what can I do there? So that's where they come into it in part three, Mother Nature's Mercy, which is very much well, Jesse's not a mountain man. He's not that well equipped out there, so it'd be a case of, okay, how could I sort of put my own spin on that kind of story? Well, let's just chuck him out in the wilderness with very little, and just sort of see how he gets on. And then in part four, which I'm hoping is going to be coming out sort of late summertime. I can tell you that's called The Lion, the Drifter, and the Wayward Son. You may notice the riff there on the title of that pin. It's fine. That's very much Jesse in the big city, but it's a city sort of. What if it was, a bit corrupt? The sheriff there, he's in the pocket of a very powerful man, and how would that work? So, we get to play around with, all sorts, get to really explore the city in looking at saloons, hotels, and there's like a really big piece about the theatre there. So we get to see, what was entertainment like back then? So that was fun there, just, having a look at what kind of entertainment there was when you just get so many sort of traveling theatres that come on and do a show. There's magicians. I had no idea magic was so big in the Old West. So I spent days just looking into magic tricks that they used to do in the Old West. It was it was great. Yeah, and then and so on and so forth. I've got stuff coming up with, bounty hunters and revenge stories and stuff. So hopefully
That's where we're
there's
going next.
yeah, so hopefully there's you know that's what I'm trying to do in terms of try and do something a little bit different tonally with each one, all the while building up a stronger narrative as people get to know Jesse, basically, and then sort of if enough people like it, and people do want more books down the line, I've got a whole sort of bigger narrative to come once we've done that will sort of streamline it a bit. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, you're off to a great start with it. You got 5 books down already with all of that. So that's most people don't even get around to writing one book.
It's very well. They give me tight deadlines, so I think that helps. Sort of, they like the quick turnaround. So I'm like, okay, I've got how many weeks to do this one? Okay, so and the thing is, it's good for me because writing for even back in my days at university, when I'd have a deadline that was in May and it was September, I wouldn't think about it until February, and then I'd be like, oh, what was the title? So having sort of a tight deadline, things like that, it's good because I like the pressure of it. Well, I've got 6 weeks to come up with a new idea, get it planned, get it drafted, get it done, get it out to a few people, get their opinion, get it back, completely redo it to make it better, and then hopefully by the end of that, there's a fun little story at the end of it.
Excellent. So, what would be your best piece of advice you can give to somebody who's starting out trying to write and trying to get that first book done?
Um, I say that I draw a blank when I've literally written pieces about this before. I know it's just, oh, the irony. Um, I would say, um, write for yourself first because um, if you're not enjoying what you are writing, then it's a good chance that not many other people are going to enjoy it. And um, discipline trumps inspiration every single day. Like if I only ever wrote when I felt like it, I wouldn't have, four odd books under my belt already. Like the thing is, even right on the days where you think you're gonna come out with nothing, because at the end of the day, you can't edit a blank page. So, even if you've written something that's the worst thing you've ever written, it's a start. So
Yeah.
yeah, discipline, just do a little bit every day. Even, try and do if you've got a plan, even if you've not really got a plan, just start out with the character, give them something to do, and write a page and go from there. And try and do it, even if you do a page every day, you'll get there in the end.
Indeed. Yeah. It seems the discipline of being able to sit there and set time to write and just getting it done gets a lot of people from A to B on things because few people have the discipline or just have the drive to just sit there and just type nonstop and don't have to stop, think about what they're doing, research, do any of that stuff all at once.
Oh, my research sort of comes up. Well, I'll do research. I did a lot of research at first, and then when I have an idea for the book, I'll do a bit. Then I'll sort of get a rough idea, but then I'll write it. And then what I do is I research afterwards, and I say, right, this thing that I've got him doing, would he be able to do that? Or always using this? Did this gun exist in that period? Sort of thing. And just little things like that, because yeah, there's several things that I've had to change because he's using something that wasn't invented for another 15 years. I was like, oh, that, yeah. So
And that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
time period where new stuff was being invented every year almost at that point. So it's, yeah,
yeah,
changes fast,
yeah.
depending upon what year you start in. Yeah.
So that's why I went sort of late 1800s because well, there's a lot of cool stuff there, and it's
Mhm.
not quite. Because what is it? Is it 1899 that the sort of what was it? Oh no, that's when Red Dead Redemption 2 set. Sorry, no, because I'm just thinking when was the West officially declared over?
Oh, it depends. Some people can, depends on the part of
Yeah.
the country you're talking about, depends on who you're talking to. You can stretch it as far as 1920. Some people can stretch it almost to the 50s, but 1910 to 1920 is basically where it really, everything was built up at that point, and there was really a faded frontier at that. So,
Yeah, because yeah, because that was
but
the lawlessness of it,
yeah,
sort of, and I know by sort of the First World War, there was not much going on.
yeah.
Again, we learned a lot about that over here.
The heyday was, late 1860s to late 1880s. So, anywhere in there works well. And then you can extend stuff for 30 years either direction. Yeah. So where do people find out more about you?
Um, there's a few places actually. I've got a website, www.danielgrabowski.com, which is basically that's like my work website. So it's got my portfolio on it of the work that I do. So if anybody needs a CV writing or things like that, needs an advert writing, I'm your man. But I've also got a dedicated tab for the Jesse Clayton novels, where it's got a listing with a description of each one and a few extra bits and links to buy for anyone that is interested. I'm not sure if it's the American or English links though. So yeah, just double check that for anyone interested. And then also on my blog on there, um, I'm always posting stuff what I'm doing if it's the latest job I've done or Jesse Clayton news. And I'll probably put a bit about this on there at some point actually when this is released. With a link to the site. And what else have I forgot? And then I suppose you can follow me on Instagram at Ixwabarg. That's just Grabowski backwards. Um, and I'm on Facebook too, Danny Grabowski. I'm in the DSP group, so if anyone's in there fancies giving me an ad, go for it. I'm always happy to chat anything Western or Jesse Clayton.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time on it all.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on. It's been wonderful.